achieved over the past decades, particularly in emerging economies, but it would also propel us over an environmental tipping point into uncharted territory where no future will be sustainable. There is no one single country that is not adversely affected in one way or another, and we cannot solve those global environmental problems alone. Therefore, we all have the responsibility to safeguard environmental multilateralism to make it work. Environmental multilateralism is the only mechanism where all countries, regardless of their size and wealth, stand on equal footing and equal treatment. The voices of all countries, North and South, developed and developing, must be heard. For that reason, in this auspicious opportunity, Indonesia presidency has invited for the first time our brothers and sisters, representatives from CARICOM, the African Union, as well as NEPAD, to attend this important meeting. Their concern and interest should matter. Each and every country can contribute to the solution in one way or another. Environmental multilateralism is also the only way to effectively coordinate efforts to tackle global challenges. In this light, let us do our best to strengthen strategic trust and mutual respect, since multilateralism can only deliver when there is trust among us. Hence, it is also our responsibility to be part of the solution. We build bridges, not walls, and we promote common interest, not self-interest. Excellencies, distinguished heads of delegation, esteemed delegates, ladies and gentlemen, collective actions and global partnership are imperative if we are to tackle global environment challenges and to lead the world towards sustainable recovery. High hope is now on our shoulders, and we cannot fail. G20 needs to be relevant to the world at large and not only to its members. I hope these perspectives could provide some enrichment for our endeavor, and I look forward to having a progressive and productive discussion with you all today. Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished heads of delegates, esteemed delegates, now I would like to invite the presidential Troika members, Italy and India, to deliver their opening remarks. Excellency Minister from Italy, you have the floor.
Mrs. Chair, thank you very much for giving me the floor. Italy is honored to deliver some introductory remarks as a member of the Troika. First of all, let me say that we strongly commend the Indonesian presidency for the great leadership demonstrated during these intense months of work and for making all efforts to reach an ambitious outcome here in Bali. We continue to strongly support your work to secure an ambitious final document. Before turning to the main topics of this ministerial meeting, please allow me to reiterate that the Italian government continues to condemn the Russian aggression against Ukraine. I would also like to stress that the great consequences that war is having on the environment, on food and energy security, on our pandemic recovery efforts, and on our pursuit of sustainable development goals. I must therefore stress that my government considers crucial to have in this final text a clear language that reflects the unjustifiable and unprovoked Russia war of aggression against Ukraine. Minister of Environment and Forestry, Excellencies, representatives of the international organizations, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Italy wishes to thank the Presidency for including in this year's agenda the most relevant challenges to face at global level, building on the results achieved by the past G20 meetings and alongside the pathway traced in other multilateral fora. Today, we have the responsibility to deliver a clear message to the international community on the urgency to accelerate the implementation of the commitments for a healthy planet for the prosperity of all, including a sustainable recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. We must work urgently to tackle the interconnected planetary crisis and avoid accelerating pollution and unsustainable behaviors. By destroying nature, we are destroying the web of life that supports our existence on Earth. We must stop undermining our own future. These planetary crises stand out as a pressing concern for the entire humanity. They are impeding a smooth building back better process after the pandemic, a just and inclusive development and a sustainable economic growth. Through the great work carried out under the Indonesian presidency, we have shown the willingness to keep the pace with the global ambition on climate change and put forward actions to protect, conserve, sustainably manage and restore ecosystems in continuity with the past work of the G20 presidencies. These results witness the crucial role of multilateralism, especially in informing the next conferences of the parties under the UNFCCC to strengthen the global commitment to move swiftly towards a net zero world and to meet our goal to keep 1.5 degrees within reach. As agreed at the G20 meeting last year in Naples, resource efficiency and circular economy are important tools for the achievement of sustainable development, and they can contribute significantly to sustainable consumption and production. Coordination across all levels of government has a crucial role to play in this regard, and innovation potential should be harvested to support the recovery and the transition to the society we want to see. Italy believes that these integrated approaches and policy coherence are key levers to enhance sustainability, and that cross-cutting solutions can be mutually beneficial to the purpose of an inclusive, sustainable development. Mr. Chair, in conclusion, Italy wishes to thank again the Indonesian Presidency for sparing no efforts in working with determination to bring consensus around a set of key messages to be included in the outcome document, also through the tireless work of the two working groups. Let me finally take this opportunity to wish the incoming Indian presidency a very successful outcome. Italy stands ready to cooperate with you all for your common priorities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Alessandro Modiano. Now I would like to invite Excellency Minister Sri Buddha Pandayoda, the Minister from India. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Her Excellency, Dr. Siti Nurbaya Baka, Honorable Minister of Environment and Forestry, Republic of Indonesia, Excellencies and distinguished delegates from G20 countries, guest countries, international agencies, my dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to congratulate Her Excellency Dr. Siti Nurbaya Baka for organizing this G20 joint ministerial at Bali. It was here in 2007 that the world adopted the Bali Action Plan, which emphasized that climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction agendas are closely linked. Therefore, apart from doing everything we can to cut emissions and slow the pace of global warming, we must also adapt to climate consequences so we can protect ourselves and our communities. Excellencies, the world is going through multiple crises with rising energy bills, increasing food insecurity, capital flight from developing countries, and a pandemic that continues to push back years of progress in sustainable development. Alongside this ongoing crisis are the growing threats of climate change, biodiversity loss, and land and ocean pollution. These environmental stresses impose additional burdens on the poorest and most vulnerable who have done little to create global environmental problems and whose development aspirations remain unfulfilled. As our overall objective, we must seek a trinity of jobs, growth, and sustainability embedded in equity and justice. there is an urgent need to mobilize resources to stimulate the economy in a manner that makes it more resilient and sustainable. But the current pace and scale of climate finance from developed countries is not matching the global aspiration to combat climate change. Collectively, work is needed toward turning ambition into action in accordance with the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. Excellencies, India is totally committed to driving its low-carbon industry transition through a multi-pronged approach that cuts across sectors and issues. The low-carbon development strategy is enunciated in the Panchamrit, the 5 nectars, is an important reflection of our strong commitment towards sustainable development. The most recent Indian financial budget clearly highlights the need for transition and climate action. So the industry front, the budget specifically mentioned 4 pilot projects for coal gasification and conservation of coal into chemicals required for industry. In order to mobilize resources for green infrastructure, sovereign green bonds will also be issued as a part of the government's financial market approach. India has progressively reduced and rationalized subsidies through elimination of major transport fuel subsidies for better targeting, such as through providing subsidies on renewable sources of energy and concessional tax rates. India also has a range of mechanisms, including the coal cess introduced in 2010, perform, achieve and trade to reduce energy consumption in energy-intensive industries and renewable energy certificate scheme to promote generation of renewable energy. Most recently, India's lower house of parliament has passed a legislation to establish a domestic carbon credit market. In addition, India has recognized that circular economy approaches are key for achieving environmentally sound waste management and is working tirelessly to bring circularity and resource efficiency in 11 waste streams with the preparation of action plans. Excellencies, globally, in order to effectively combat climate change, we must first recognize that development and environment conservation need to be aligned rather than treated exclusive of each other. Secondly, we must decouple economic growth from greenhouse gas emissions while considering national circumstances and principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. In this regard, Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi launched a global initiative, Lifestyle for Environment, Life Movement at COP26 in Glasgow, to promote an environment-conscious lifestyle that focuses on mindful and deliberate utilization instead of mindless and destructive consumption of resources. India's enhanced nationally determined contribution to the Paris Agreement include life in their ambition to propagate healthy and sustainable lifestyles based on traditions and values of conservation, moderation and climate justice, and to protect the poor and the vulnerable from the adverse impact of climate change. Economies at large must inculcate resource efficiency and circularity while considering national circumstances and capabilities to achieve our environmental, climate and development predicaments. Excellencies, all across the world, people are facing a spate of new and challenging environmental problems every day. Conservation and restoration of ecosystem and vulnerable biota become increasingly important to balance food security, human development, vital ecosystem services, and sustained livelihoods. While India has witnessed large-scale economic development in the last few decades, we have remained conscious of our environmental heritage. India is one of the world's mega biodiversity regions with over 8% of the world's species diversity. In the last decade, India has increased its forest cover and restored its wildlife through effective protection, monitoring and management of protected areas. Our effort for halting and reserving soil degradation were also recognized at the UNCCD COP15 earlier this year. India has also notified new rules to create regulatory framework for conservation and management of wetlands, including peatlands. But we must all do more. The world needs greater global collective action to halt and recover biodiversity loss and promote sustainable land management measures. At least 23% of global land area is no longer productive for agriculture use, and 75% land has transformed from its natural state. This is directly affecting at least half of the humanity and threatening half the global GDP, or about USD 44 trillion. Therefore, I welcome our collective decision to reduce degraded land by 50% by 2040 and reverse biodiversity loss by 2030. For this, continued support is needed for the G20 Global Initiative for reducing land degradation and enhancing conservation of territorial habitat. I also welcome effort to conserve, restore, and ensure sustainable use of water-dependent ecosystem. We must develop the legal and governance framework to ensure integrated water resource management. The G20 member must hold a special responsibility toward the ocean. Given that we are all coastal countries, we are cumulatively responsible for 45% of the world's coastline and over 21% of the exclusive economic zones. India supports science-based climate action on the most vulnerable coastal areas and ecosystem, and recognize the importance of improving ocean data collection to build resilience in line with the UN Decade of Ocean Science and Sustainable Development. India, with its Earth observation satellites launched by the Indian Space Research Organization, has focused on collecting ocean data to develop optimal coastal zone management plans using state-derived input for improved coastal land use, vital coastal habitat, and monitor the ecological status of all marine protected areas. Today, India has one of the largest coastlines of remote sensing satellite in operations. The ocean also holds vast natural capital estimated of USD 24 trillion. Exploring this immense opportunity must include sustainability practices that enhance rather than degrade the marine environment and provide new growth opportunities rather than disrupt the lives and livelihood of millions of dependent on marine resources. Once again, the need for financial resources, both public and private, to deliver on these ambitions is paramount. Excellencies, the primary responsibility for the transition toward net zero emission rests with those who have historically accounted for most accumulated greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere. Ladies and gentlemen, my travel to some African and developed countries alongside in the recent past have further sensitized me to the fact that maximum impact of the climate crisis is being borne by the poorest countries and most vulnerable communities, which have contributed the least to the climate crisis, and lack of technology and capacity and finance required to significantly alter the status quo. However, the promise of climate finance remains a mirage. An added problem is the clubbing of development finance with climate finance. In 2019, 70% of public climate finance was given out as loan instead of grant. In 2019-20, only 6% of climate finance was in grants. This is pushing developing countries into more debt. Developing countries face an estimated gap of USD 1 trillion in COVID-19 spending. While India has not been a traditional contributor of global emissions, we are showing the intent in our action to be a problem solver. India has made remarkable progress in recent years in electrifying all households and rapidly increasing access to clean cooking energy. It is also one of the world's largest markets for deployment of renewable energy. India's national green hydrogen mission promises to be a game changer for reducing emissions from hard to abate sectors. All these efforts need investment at lower costs and innovative models for scaling up climate finance to double 2019 level by 2025. Now approaches are also needed to develop and deploy low carbon technologies. To conclude, I would like to emphasize that we must move beyond climate talk to climate action. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. Unless we address the various issues prudently and seriously, we are surely doomed for disaster. I would like to end with the old Sanskrit language of Indian Sanskrit language shloka, which encompasses our vision for a healthy world and peaceful life. Now I read in Sanskrit, Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarva Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukh Bhag Bhavet, Om Shanti Shanti. That means, may all sentient beings to be at peace. May no one suffer from illness. May all see what is auspicious. May no one suffer. Om, peace, peace, peace. Thank you to all.
Thank you, Excellency Minister Sri Buddha Pandar Yadav, India. Excellencies and distinguished delegates, let us now proceed to agenda item session 1, which are the presentation by resource persons who will focus on achieving environment objective towards sustainable recovery.